Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Pijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jam Vishpad Paramhamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatra Shatashi Shamad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Today is a special day. It is Ekadashi, and aside from it being Ekadashi, it is the Ekadashi in which Srila Prabhupada finished the English translation of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Rama Ekadashi. So because of that, I thought we could read Prabhupada's concluding words to the Chaitanya Charitamrita that he wrote on this Ekadashi. And you could prepare the verse. So everybody could repeat after me, please. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, so we are reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya-lila, Volume 2. These are the concluding words. Srila Prabhupada's concluding words. Today, Sunday, November 10th, 1974, corresponding to the 10th of Kartik, Chaitanya era, 488, the 11th day of the dark fortnight, the Rama Ekadashi, we have now finished the English translation of Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita in accordance with the authorized order of His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj, my beloved eternal spiritual master, guide, and friend. Although according to material vision, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada passed away from this material world on the last day of December 1936, I still consider His Divine Grace to be always present with me by His Vani, His words. There are two ways of association, by Vani and by Vapu. It's not working. That's right. There are two ways of association, by Vani and by Vapu. Vani means words, and Vapu means physical presence. Physical presence is sometimes appreciable and sometimes not, but Vani continues to exist eternally. Therefore, we must take advantage of the Vani, not the physical presence. The Bhagavad Gita, for example, is the Vani of Lord Krishna. Although Krishna is personally present 5,000 years ago and is no longer physically present from the materialistic point of view, the Bhagavad Gita continues. In this connection, we may call to memory the time when I was fortunate enough to meet His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada sometime in the year 1922. Srila Prabhupada had come to Calcutta from Sridham Mayapur to start the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Math. He was sitting in a house at Altadanga when, through the inducement of an intimate friend, the late Sriman Narendranath Mulik, I had the opportunity to meet His Divine Grace for the first time. I do not remember the actual date of the meeting, but at that time I was one of the managers of Dr. Bose's laboratory in Calcutta. I was a newly married young man, addicted to Gandhi's movement and dressed in khadi, type of cloth. Fortunately, even at our first meeting, His Divine Grace advised me to preach the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in English in the Western countries. Because at that time I was a complete nationalist, a follower of Mahatma Gandhi's, I submitted to His Divine Grace that unless our country were freed from foreign subjugation, no one would hear the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu seriously. Of course, we had some argument on this subject, but at last I was defeated and convinced that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message is the only panacea for suffering humanity. I was also convinced that the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was then in the hands of a very expert devotee, and that surely the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would spread all over the world. I could not, however, immediately take up his instructions to preach, but I took his words very seriously and was always thinking of how to execute his order, although I was quite unfit to do so. In this way, I passed my life as a householder until 1950, when I retired from family life as a vanaprastha. With no companion, I loitered here and there until 1958, when I took sannyas. Then I was completely ready to discharge the order of my spiritual master. Previously, in 1936, just before His Divine Grace passed away at Jagannath Puri, I wrote him a letter asking what I could do to serve him. In reply, he wrote me a letter dated 13th of December 1936, ordering me, in the same way, to preach in English the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as I had heard it from him. After he passed away, I started the fortnightly magazine Back to Godhead sometime in 1944 and tried to spread the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through this magazine. After I took sannyas, a well-wishing friend suggested that I write books instead of magazines. Magazines, he said, might be thrown away, but books remain perpetually. Then I attempted to write srimadbhagavatam. Before that, when I was a householder, I had written on Srimad-Bhagavad-Gita and had completed about 1,100 pages. But somehow or other the manuscript was stolen. In any case, when I had published Srimad-Bhagavatam, first canto in 3 volumes in India, I thought of going to the USA. By the mercy of His Divine Grace, I was able to come to New York on September 17th, 1965. Since then, I have translated many books, including Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, a summary, and many others. In the meantime, I was induced to translate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and publish it in an elaborate version. In his leisure time and later life, His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, would simply read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It was his favorite book. He used to say that there would be a time when foreigners would learn the Bengali language to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The work on this translation began about 18 months ago. Now, by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it is finished. In this connection, I have to thank my American disciples, especially Sriman Pradyumna Das Adhikari, Sriman Nitai Das Adhikari, Sriman Jaidvaita Das Brahmachari, and many other boys and girls who are sincerely helping me in writing, editing, and publishing all these literatures. Dravida Prabhu, you're involved too, right? Okay. So Prabhu was talking about you too, right? What did he say? Not really? Said many. Yeah. Many, he said, many other boys and girls who are sincerely helping me in writing, editing, publishing all these literatures. Writing, editing, publishing all these. Yeah, he read a letter, right? They'll go back to God. Anyone who helped. He printed out for all the devotees to inspire them. You got your ticket? I think that His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, is always seeing my activities and guiding me within my heart by His words. As it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye. Spiritual inspiration comes from within the heart, wherein the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in His Paramatma feature, is always sitting with all His devotees and associates. It is to be admitted that whatever translation work I have done is through the inspiration of my spiritual master, because personally I am most insignificant and incompetent to do this materially impossible work. I do not think myself a very learned scholar, but I have full faith in the service of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. If there is any credit to my activities of translating, it is all due to His Divine Grace. Certainly, if His Divine Grace were physically present at this time, it would have been a great occasion for jubilation. But even though He is not physically present, I am confident that He is very much pleased by this work of translation. He was very fond of seeing many books published to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Therefore, our society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, has been formed to execute the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It is my wish that devotees of Lord Chaitanya all over the world enjoy this translation, and I am glad to express my gratitude to the learned men in the Western countries who are so pleased with my work that they are ordering in advance all my books that will be published in the future. On this occasion, therefore, I request my disciples who are determined to help me in this work to continue their cooperation fully, so that philosophers, scholars, religionists, and people in general all over the world will benefit by reading our transcendental literatures, such as Srimad-Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, dated November 10th, 1974, at the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, Hare Krishna Land, Juhu, Bombay. Try. Om Ganatavedandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshuvanmalitamena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Kum Karitava Chalam Pangam Langate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diritananam Vancha Kapadribhishcha Kripa Sandubhevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So there's many wonderful, well, all the concluding words are absolutely wonderful, but there's many things to think about and meditate on and appreciate within these concluding words. And Srila Prabhupada, it's a glorification of his spiritual master. That's the main, you could say, essence of this, the concluding words, glorification of his spiritual master. And he's saying how my spiritual master, he said, first of all, he refers to him as his eternal spiritual master, guide, and friend, and how, according to material vision, he passed away on the last day of December 1936. But he says that he still considers his divine grace to be always present with him by his words. So Prabhupada talks about Vani and Vapu, the instructions and the physical presence. And of course, Prabhupada states that within, if a disciple has opportunity to have some association, you could say, of the physical presence, it means that Prabhupada says in different parts in the Charitamrita and other books that when the spiritual master is physically present, then the disciple should and can assist practically in serving the spiritual master's vapu, which means whatever it may be, cooking, cleaning, this, that, humbly serving. And there's so many examples of that, like, Madhavendra Puri and Ishvara Puri, right? Madhavendra Puri was doing humble service. Ishvara Puri was doing humble service for Madhavendra Puri. And in his last days in this world, this is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita as well, that Ishvara Puri was humbly serving Madhavendra Puri in so many different ways, and that because of that, Madhavendra Puri, because of that humble service, he bestowed all of the blessings on Ishvara Puri. And of course, Ishvara Puri, he was the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it's a very wonderful pastime in Chaitanya Charitamrita we could read about. Many instructions in there. And of course, I was thinking about Narottam Das Thakur serving Lokanath Goswami in Vrindavan. And Lokanath Goswami, he was very humble, of course. Vaishnavas are humble, but he didn't want to accept any disciples. And Narottam Das Thakur, he really wanted Lokanath Goswami to be his spiritual master. But Lokanath Goswami, he wasn't accepting any disciples or any service from any of the Vaishnavas. He wouldn't let anybody do anything for him. So Narottam Das Thakur secretly, he would clean up the place where apparently Lokanath Goswami would evacuate, in the morning or whatever. Clean that place up very humbly. And then eventually Lokanath Goswami realized what Narottam Das Thakur was doing, and because he was so sincere and serious and humble, that then he accepted him as a disciple, his only disciple. So yeah, there's many examples throughout history of devotees humbly serving their spiritual master, and yeah, that's important if we could have the opportunity to take that opportunity. And as Prabhupada says here, that the physical presence is sometimes appreciable and sometimes not. So, yeah, sometimes the physical presence is there and sometimes it's not. And, of course, we have Srila Prabhupada's disappearance or remembrance festival coming up soon, and that was the time in which Srila Prabhupada left. So devotees who are disciples of Srila Prabhupada, direct disciples, means they're not 20 years old right now and they've accepted through Ritvik initiation Prabhupada as their guru or something like that. But I mean, direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada had about 5,000 disciples. Those disciples, they had to live with that Srila Prabhupada was here physically on the planet, and he was doing what he was doing, preaching all over the world, and then Srila Prabhupada's physical he left. So devotees had to deal with that, and are still dealing with that, the separation and how to continue without Srila Prabhupada's physical presence. And how does a disciple do that? They do that by following the instructions, by latching on, by holding on to the instructions of their spiritual master, which some devotees got personal instructions from Srila Prabhupada, and some devotees, of course everybody gets general instructions, but whether they're general or personal instructions, we should hold on to them and follow them. And some devotees who are disciples of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, some of those spiritual masters have also left, a number of them, and they have to deal with that, how to continue without the physical presence of the spiritual master. And they have to realize that happens by following, that's possible for them to continue in Krishna consciousness by following the instructions of their spiritual master. So that particular time in which spiritual master leaves is a very difficult time for disciples, in that it's a challenge that, okay, are you going to give up Krishna consciousness, or are you going to continue? And sometimes when the spiritual master leaves, actually there's statements within Shastra, it says when the spiritual master leaves there's chaos, possible chaos, and which could translate into many different things, but it's a challenge that are we going to be able to continue? So, yes, it is a real thing, it is a real challenge, and it is something that most devotees will have to deal with. And generally, if one knows they have to deal with some problem or some issue in the future, then intelligent person, they try to make some preparations. They try to prepare themselves. So yeah, in general, we should prepare ourselves that those who are spiritual master is physically present. There may be a time where he's not, so we have to prepare ourselves that how am I going to continue in that situation. Now, of course, I don't want to get too I don't know, say morbid or anything like that, think about horrible things, because it is a horrible thing, terrible thing when spiritual master leaves, but there is an idea of preparing. So the most important thing that the disciples have to hold on to is instructions. And if they're able to do that, then sincerely and seriously and with all of the determination they can muster up, and by the blessings of their spiritual master and the devotees, then they could be successful. And Srila Prabhupada outlines his life here in brief, that when he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he first met him, and his family life, and him taking Vanaprastha, him taking sannyas, and him translating the Srimad Bhagavatam and coming to America, he in brief talks about all this in concluding words. And he always, throughout these concluding words, he makes the point that, again, it's a glorification of his spiritual master. And he was saying how his spiritual master in his leisure time, in his later life, he would read the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which was his favorite book. So these books that Srila Prabhupada worked so hard on, Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, these are meant to be our main sources, or one of our main sources of inspiration in our life. It's not something that they're just supposed to sit on the shelf and collect a bunch of dust, and they're never read, and we're just busy running around all the time, doing this, doing that, doing so many things, even if they're devotional things. Because nowadays it is so easy to become completely absorbed in so many things that are not directly sadhana. Now, I'm not advising that, okay, we close down all the programs and we just engage in sadhana all day. But there is imbalance, because we should go through Chaitanya Charitamrita many times, or we should study it regularly. We should study Srimad Bhagavatam regularly. Or else our devotional activities can even become, I won't say mundane, but Prabhupada did make some comments in relation to that. He said that Yamuna Devi, of course, Prabhupada he had a lot of affection and for Yamuna Devi, and very dear disciple. But on one particular occasion, Yamuna Devi, she was out shopping, not for saris, not for whatever, not for jewelry, not for herself. She was shopping for the deities. She was out shopping for the deities. And Prabhupada was giving class. And Prabhupada asked, where's Yamuna Devi? And devotee said, Prabhupada, she's out shopping for the deities, this and that. And then Prabhupada said, this isn't good. He said, if she continues like this, if this behavior continues, then it will become this shopping and this and that will just become mundane. In other words, she or whoever does that, they won't see the spiritual significance of what they're doing. So, for example, I was just thinking, because you're a farmer, or you farm, but you or whoever, they're out there, with the shovel and a pick, and pulling weeds and this and that, working very hard all day long, or whatever they may do, cooking for the deities or distributing books. If there's not sufficient hearing or reading of the books, and they think, what is this? I'm just engaged in all this hard work, and for what? I'm not getting any money. And then people start losing the spiritual significance of what, losing the vision of seeing the spiritual significance of what they're doing. So it's a problem, or it could be a problem. Yeah. And then also Prabhupada said about devotees going out and preaching and collecting, making life members, because Prabhupada was in Juhu. Similar case. Prabhupada was in Juhu, and he was up in his quarters, and the evening arti was supposed to be going, or was going on, but devotees weren't there having kirtan. And then Prabhupada asked one devotee, said, "Oh, where are the devotees? I don't hear the kirtan." And one devotee said, "Oh, Prabhupada, they're out in the city, they're collecting. They're making life members." And Prabhupada said, "Oh, no, this is not my idea." He said, morning and evening they should meet, they should have a program, and if they just stay out hours and hours and hours, he said they'll just become like the karmis, become like the fruit of workers, materialistic fruit of workers. So, without chanting Hare Krishna, yeah, that's what he said about deity worship too. He said that about in New Vrindavan, I believe they were installing the deities, and then Prabhupada said that he said if there's not sufficient hearing and chanting about Krishna, then devotees will think, oh well, this deity worship is just a burden. My spiritual master has given me such a burden in the form of the deities. And he even said that some places, they close up. They close up, and spider webs and animals living in the temple. Not like brahmachari animals, but like animals. So, whatever it may be, there's danger. So therefore, the idea is that to read the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and there's so many wonderful, pleasing, just nectarian narrations within the Chaitanya Charitamrita. They're just absolutely wonderful. And recently I was reading about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Jagannananda Pandit. It's absolutely wonderful. Jagannananda Pandit, he gets this very expensive oil, and he wants Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to use it. He wants to massage Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Lord Chaitanya says, he tells Govinda that, tell Jagannananda Pandit that I cannot use this, I'm a sannyasi, and people, if I use it and I'm on the street and somebody smells it, they get a scent of it, they'll think, oh, who is this sannyasi? He must be I forgot the word they used, but the sannyasis who keep women, He said, I can't do that. So he said, give it to Jagannath, Lord Jagannath. And then Jagannananda Pandit heard about it, and he was completely, I don't know what word you want to, transcendentally upset, just furious, yeah. And it said that he fasted. He closed his doors and he fasted for many days. And then Lord Chaitanya called him and he said, "Oh, Jagannananda Pandit, you've been fasting, and you gave me this oil." And then Jagannananda Pandit said, "Oh, oil?" He said, "I didn't give you any oil." And then Jagannananda Pandit got the pot, the clay pot. He just threw it. There's a picture of it painting. And anyways, as time goes on, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because of Jagannananda Pandit's being so angry and upset with him, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he asked him, "Oh, can you come cook for me?" And then Lord Chaitanya, or Jagannananda Pandit, cooked all these wonderful preparations, sat Lord Chaitanya down, and he just fed Lord Chaitanya and fed him and fed him and fed him so much, that. And it said that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in fear. He didn't want to say, "Okay, that's enough, stop," because he didn't want to make Jagannananda Pandit upset. And there's so many wonderful, so sweet pastimes within the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is displaying to the world, to us, his kindness, his sweetness, his sweet relationships he has with his devotees, and the relationship the devotees have. So it's absolutely wonderful. And if, for whatever reason, we may not have a lot of attraction for that, then I'm not going to say some heavy words. But if we don't have any attraction for that, then or whatever. Maybe our attraction is less, or maybe it's not a lot, or something like that. Or then I wrote an email to Prahladananda Swami one time about reading, and I wish I should have brought it, but I'll bring it maybe next time. I'll read it. It's quite wonderful what he said. But in essence, he was saying that if you don't have attraction for reading about Krishna Leela and these different things, then just do it as a matter of duty, as a matter of service to your spiritual master, and as a matter of purifying your intelligence and strengthening your intelligence in Krishna consciousness. And he said that over time, you'll develop a taste for it more and more and more. So yeah, sadhana bhakti. So Srila Prabhupada, it was his favorite book, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, I mean, such a personality as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, I mean, this is no ordinary personality. It's extraordinary personality, pure devotee, Prabhupada said, Vaikuntha man, and qualified in so many ways, materially, spiritually, coming directly from the spiritual world. I mean, and he's saying that this is his favorite book. So that means it's an important book. It's a very important book. He said that people learn the Bengali language just to read this book. So whether people... We don't have to learn the Bengali language necessarily, because Srila Prabhupada, he translated it. Of course we can if we want, but it's here for us in English now. So yeah, we should try to take advantage and not, just let things, because after all, the ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, it's Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. It is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. Of course, we are worshipping Krishna, worshipping Radha Krishna, but devotee, we should never forget that this is Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. That's what that's what Srila Prabhupada said so many times. Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan army. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came around 500 years ago. Krishna come again in the mood of Srimati Radharani. So it's a very, very high book and important, extremely important. And then Srila Prabhupada says here, in the last couple of paragraphs, he's talking about how he says, I think that His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, is always seeing my activities and guiding me within my heart by His words. And then he says, spiritual inspiration comes from within the heart, wherein the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, excuse me, is always sitting with all His devotees and associates. It is to be admitted that whatever translation work I have done is through the inspiration of my spiritual master. And Prabhupada says, because I am most insignificant and incompetent to do this. So he's giving all credit to his spiritual master, that I have done this, but it is really the mercy of my spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada is, of course, feeling that and experiencing that. And he's also teaching us that this is the mood that we're supposed to have, that okay, we may do so many things, and they may be good, and they may be great in Krishna consciousness. We hope, right? We want to do great things. But we should always remember that without, some people say, oh, well, how is it just the mercy of my spiritual master? And we could think about it like this, that without the mercy of my spiritual master, what am I? What am I made of? What is my qualification? So in other words, without the mercy of the spiritual master, we're actually paralyzed completely. We might as well be, as that verse says, mukam karitivachalam, we might as well be spiritually deaf, blind, lame, just incompetent to do anything. So it's really the mercy of the spiritual master that gives us the power to do anything, really, in Krishna consciousness, because after all, we're not we're not working in the ordinary, you could say, paradigm that ordinary materialistic people are working in. Okay, they could do so many things. That's also by the mercy of Krishna. But, material energy is dealing with them. But we're working within Krishna consciousness, which the idea is that the power for us to do anything is coming from them. So yeah, these are some very interesting comments or points Srila Prabhupada's bringing up here. And he's saying that I wish that all devotees of Lord Chaitanya all over the world enjoy this translation. So, enjoy the translation, Prabhupada said. And I'm glad to express my gratitude to the learned men of Western countries who are ordering my books and who are so pleased with my work that they're ordering in advance all my books that we publish in the future. On this occasion, therefore, I request my disciples who are determined to help me in this work to continue their cooperation fully, so that philosophers, scholars, religionists, and people in general all over the world will benefit by reading our transcendental literatures such as Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, devotees, many devotees, before they became devotees, they did a lot of searching. They read this book, they read that book, they talked to this guru, that guru, talked to so many. But we see that any book does not compare at all, practically speaking, to the Srimad Bhagavatam or to the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Just objectively speaking, they just don't compare. The philosophical, wonderful philosophical points made within all the books, the pastimes, the goal, everything behind it is just absolutely wonderful. So yeah, we should feel inspired to read and to meditate on such things. And aside from feeling inspired, we should feel very grateful for Srila Prabhupada and devotees who helped Srila Prabhupada put together such wonderful books. And then we should be eager to try to share that message of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srimad Bhagavatam, with whoever it is, family, friends, the guy at the post office, whoever, it doesn't matter. Anybody and everybody, we should try to extend as far as possible the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, the message of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In this way, Srila Prabhupada, it's like we'll be trying to, we can't repay him, but in this way we could try to repay him for what he's given us. So, all right, does anybody have any questions or comments? I have a question. What happened to the clock here? I mean, it's broken. Okay.
I had to bite my tongue because you were inspiring so many wonderful thoughts. Thank you for a short one-line answer, please. How did you realize it was this day that he completed Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to mention that earlier, so I'm glad you said that. My spiritual master, he was in Juhu. Of course, he was there for many years, he was the main person there, but he was there when Srila Prabhupada completed this, because, yeah, it said November 10th, 1974 at Hare Krishna Land, Juhu, Bombay. So when Srila Prabhupada completed it, yeah, it was Ekadashi, and then devotees went up to go knock on Prabhupada's door, and Prabhupada wasn't answering, so, oh, this is kind of strange. And then one devotee came, I think it was Hare Krishna, he came out and he said, Prabhupada just completed Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he's in, complete ecstasy and very happy about that. And he said that devotees should have a big festival, and have a nice big feast and celebration for that. So, yeah, my spiritual master was there. But aside from him being there, yeah, every Ekadashi, this Ekadashi, Rama Ekadashi, he always reads these concluding words, and he sends something out. He reads the concluding words. If he happens to be at a temple, he'll speak on the concluding words. So because he did that, I was conscious of this, and I thought it was just appropriate and good that we meditate.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
There's another pastime with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and a devotee, a gentleman and a scholar. I don't remember his name and titles that he had, but he asked him, what's the most, he said, if all books of knowledge, scripture and otherwise, were destroyed and there was only one book left, which book should that be? And he thought about it for a while, didn't just blah, blah, blah. And he said, Bhagavad Gita. And then he quoted Shankaracharya from the Gita Mahatmya and a couple other references supporting it. This one scripture is all it takes. Mm-hmm. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, no, can you go on? Kind of like Ramananda and Lord Chaitanya. And so he thought, and then he said Srimad Bhagavatam, and he quoted so many verses from Srimad Bhagavatam and other Puranas glorifying the Bhagavatam. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, well, can you go on? No. And he said, I'm sorry. I have to beg that you please enlighten me because I cannot go higher. So then he quoted Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he gave so many reasons. You gave a few, like all the philosophy, all the philosophical points, Sambandha Abhideya Priyojana, Chintya Beta Beta Tattva, all the loving reciprocations with the devotees. He just went on and on and on about all that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami put into the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He said if every book in the world was dumped in the ocean and just one scripture was left, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita would sufficiently educate and enlighten everyone without any deficiency whatsoever. There would be no loss to the world or the people of this world. Really incredible exchange, glorification of CC. The other thing about where Lord Chaitanya's army and this and that, sometimes because Prabhupada really emphasized Krishna, Krishna consciousness, Hare Krishna, but Lord Chaitanya is our Yuga avatar, and it's his process, and in the beginning of his Bhagavatam, he put the life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya to give us the understanding. This is Bhagavatam in practice. This is what it means. And you related loving exchanges with devotees, how that serves and pleases the Lord.
Yeah, some time ago I was thinking about, because you're saying that, Prabhupada emphasized Krishna, and like you're saying, Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan movement is Yuga avatar. Also sometimes, at least I was thinking some time ago that there's a lot of emphasis on Krishna, of course, Supreme Personality of Godhead, and due to devotees growing up in certain religious systems and backgrounds, I was thinking that a lot of the times, at least within a lot of Christianity, there's an idea, you're focusing a lot on the Father. God, He's a Supreme Father, and devotees and people growing up in that tradition, they're not really familiar with the Supreme Mother. Of course, in Catholicism, there's Mary, Jesus' mother, but means So you're not really into that so much. So then sometimes I was thinking, do I have a tendency? Sometimes it's like, well, it's not just Krishna, but it's Hare Krishna. It's Srimati Radharani and Krishna. So just to focus on Krishna, but it's Hare Krishna, Radha Krishna, and of course Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said that we're Gaudiya Vaishnavas are even known, I forgot the exact word, but as devotees of Srimati Radharani. Devotees of Srimati Radharani, and of course we have to be careful about all that. But when Srila Prabhupada was a young boy, his father, Gaur Mohan Dey, when all the sadhus would come, he would ask them, it's recorded in Prabhupada Lilamrita, he would ask them, please bless my son. So he becomes a wonderful devotee of Srimati Radharani. He would always ask. So to be conscious of Hare Krishna, Radha Krishna, not just Krishna. And Raghunath Das Goswami, I believe, he has quite a few verses glorifying Srimati Radharani and saying so much that even if that he doesn't want to worship Krishna unless Srimati Radharani is there, so it's quite intense actually, his devotion. So similarly, not forgetting Srimati Radharani, there's Srimati Radharani and Krishna. So similarly, the idea of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that yes, it's Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. We have the Chaitanya Charitamrita that came around 500 years ago. So remembering Lord Chaitanya. And as that wonderful, I always like to think of that verse that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says. He says that he wrote that those who remember Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very difficult things become easy. And those who forget Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very easy things become difficult. So someone may say, it's very difficult to control my mind and my senses, it's very difficult to go back to Godhead, it's very difficult to preach, it's very difficult to get up in the morning, it's very difficult to chant my rounds, etc., etc., etc. Devotees could have a list things that are difficult. So, but it says if someone remembers Lord Chaitanya, then those difficult things become easy. And similarly, if one doesn't remember Lord Chaitanya, very easy things could become difficult.
Does not.
Just like, getting along with people. In many ways, it's an easy thing. You just, you respect one another. You're not harsh. You're kind with one another. Whatever, on and on and on. In many ways, it's an easy thing. Social dealings. But if we forget Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then it becomes very difficult, dealing with people and this and that. And that's just an example. Or chanting one's rounds, for example. It's very, should be easy. Shouldn't be difficult. And if it is difficult, then we should remember Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu more. It becomes easy. Yeah.
Two sentences. One is that by worship of Lord Chaitanya, we are worshiping both Radha and Krishna.
Yeah.
That's one. And the second sentence would be, it is completely impossible to get Vraja Bhakti or go back to Vrindavan Krishna without the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. It just doesn't happen. The door's not open except through him and his line. So that also lends to the nice points you're making.
Does anyone have any other comments or questions?
I just have a question.
All right, Jamal, last question.
So, you're discussing the mood in which we execute services. And you were saying that if we are not sufficiently hearing and chanting, then the mood in which we execute these services, it may become mundane, or we may lose sight of the spiritual side of these activities. So I don't know if you would prescribe the same thing or give the same answer for this particular example, or if you would be more refined. But it's about book distribution. So yesterday, or book distribution and mood of it. So yesterday I was in Ocean Beach.
You met some gods and goddesses? Gurus?
Not a lot yesterday. No, they were... so this fellow had came up to me, and he had some quite foul things to say about this devotee that he had spoken to. And he said that he felt like this devotee was just trying to sell books. Now, because he was quite offensive, he didn't exactly evoke my compassion. I didn't ask him, what made you feel that way, or how did you, please tell me how you felt. Maybe that's not good on my part, but anyway, but I assume that he meant, maybe he felt like this devotee, I don't know who he was speaking of, maybe he felt like this devotee wasn't distributing for actual welfare of the people. Maybe he felt like this devotee was just out to collect donations or something or other. So how do we establish the proper mood in our book distribution? Because people obviously pick up if the mood is not right.
There's well, one thing is that the person's perspective of the devotee may just be absolutely wrong, because they may just be in Maya and it just may be absolutely wrong. So, like, many people think so many things about devotees, but that doesn't mean it's right. Like if they think, oh, we're all completely crazy or something, and they may be very intelligent. That doesn't mean it's right. It's just it's a obscured vision. They're not seeing things properly. So that's one thing. But then on the other hand, I mean, maybe that devotee did put that mood off, that he didn't really care about the person, and he just wanted to, give him a book and move on, and maybe he wants, that to be on his score or something, or the money, or, collect a big donation or something like that. So, but, generally, with book distributors, unless they really went off, means, mentally off or like philosophically off, generally they're not always operating on that platform. Like, each time they step foot in the concrete, every single person, they're just thinking about how to get a donation from them. They don't really care about the person, just trying to get a big score or something, big donation. But sometimes devotees may be influenced like that, whatever they chant some bad rounds and take a long nap in the Sankirtan van and eat too many pakoras or something, and then they're in the lower modes, and if someone's in the lower modes and they're not like completely overbrimming with compassion and mercy for the souls, then people pick up on that. This guy seems a little passionate, because sometimes book distributors, I know they get a little passionate, they go up to people and it's like, they talk to him really fast, they give him a book, and they just hit the road, and before you know it, the guy's like, oh, man, I just gave that guy some money, and I'm here with the book. I don't even want this book or something. So it's, devotees have to be careful that they have to analyze, okay, first of all, that good sadhana, Vaisheshika Prabhu says, sadhana, that's the first step, good sadhana. And then that will put us in the right mood, and when we go out, but it could be like Krishna also talking through people, that if you're in the lower modes and you're just trying to think about money or something, then some guy on the street says, oh, you're just you just care about getting money from me, you don't care about me, you just care about the money. And it could be just Krishna kind of waking the devotee up a little bit, that Krishna speaking through a person, individual. It means that the devotee, they think, okay, yeah, that's true, and I should get my act together, and I shouldn't operate like that. So unfortunately, I mean, it should never happen, actually. No one should ever get that feeling. And no one should ever have that feeling about a devotee and it actually be accurate. They may have that feeling and it be just their minds tripping or, hallucinating. But they should never, have that feeling and it actually be true that, devotees just want a donation from them, want money. Because that's getting a bad example for ISKCON. So in order to prevent that, then devotees have to, at least before they go out, and in general, just have a right understanding of the philosophy and practice, and be good devotees, and with sadhana, strong sadhana. So that's why sometimes it's difficult if you send new men out, kind of untrained new men out, they could kind of give a bad impression. So yes, Dravida Prabhu, you want a last comment?
I have to research this, but there was an incident where when someone wrote to Prabhupada.
Yes, that's in Shrines of Civilization.
Yeah.
The lady.
Yeah, and Prabhupada had a very nice answer and try to tolerate, sacrifice so much, something like that. But what I wanted to just do as a final.
He defended it. That's the point from our view.
Yes. That's
We don't find fault. If we can help them and certainly sympathize with the person, but don't find fault with somebody who's doing something that's pleasing Prabhupada.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Very good idea. So, just a shout out, if you will. This, because you started reading about the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the concluding words. So here's the beginning words. How did this CC come about? I don't know if you know this. He knows. It actually, because Prabhupada was fixed on finishing the Bhagavatam. Of course, he stopped that to do the Krishna book because the devotees didn't know who Krishna was. He mentioned that. They're chanting all day. They've got the TLC. they got the Bhagavad Gita, but what about all the Leela? So he stopped and gave us the Leela. But Prabhupada was traveling at one point after his stroke. He was taken care of by Govinda Dasa and her husband Gosunda Dasa. There was a whole period there where they, traveling with Prabhupada. They had a translation of the CC, which I once saw. It was a three volume, very thin thing. There was no Bengali, no Sanskrit. It was just English. So it was very small compared to what we had. But they were reading that and they were relishing, and then they approached Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, this book is so nice. Of course they asked him if they could read it. We would really like you to translate this book. Dedication, which I couldn't find somehow in my old copies here.
Dedication to Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Yes, the dedication. Presented to my friends and devotees who like to read my books, and who approached me to request that I render the great Chaitanya Charitamrita into English. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
But they're specifically.
He didn't mention them, but it's known that they put, and that's
they're like the main ones.
They asked him. No one else asked him.
There's always a face in the person.
Yeah,
amazing.
So that. Yeah.
Lower modes, she has stepped on the toes of many of the ways. It would be very easy to think of those things, and you read this in Bhagavatam and
Yeah. So there's this is the way Krishna works sometimes through, and that's how the CC came out. I said, okay, and
amazing.
I'll do it. And of course, he did it so quickly, and then that was an impetus that then that was piled up. Actually, the first 3 volumes came out, already. So there were 14 volumes of the CC. And they calculated it 14 volumes in the CC and 2 volumes of the Bhagavatam that made up that marathon. So anyway,
Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, ki Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki jai.